Aloha, everyone. This is Chris Hope, and I'm here to talk about standardized testing and inquiry. So, the goal for this presentation and what I'm going to be going over is an introduction of the researcher, which is myself, the importance of the topic research, why standardized testing. I'm going to go over the research question, statement, the hypothesis and variables, methodology, the data, descriptive statistics of the data, results, some limitations, and then go over my conclusion. So, introduction of the researcher. My name is Christopher Ho. I have dual degrees in political science and psychology from the University of Nevada, Las Vegas, also known as UNLV. Currently a teacher at Ke'o High School on Hawaii Island, and I've been teaching for about 12 years. 90% of my teaching experience has been in high school, and approximately 60% of my teaching experience has been working with tested students. So the importance of this research topic is kind of a few things. So standardized testing has pretty much been the norm for public schools and how they determine whether or not a student is proficient in something. And I wanted to look specifically at whether or not providing that standardized test meant that we were acknowledging a student's ability to master a skill based on these tests. So that is pretty much the rationale and the importance for this particular topic. As you can see, there's a few other items on here as well. And why standardized testing? So a few years ago, our school determined that we would utilize standardized testing for end of course grades. Specifically, our three content areas of math, English, and biology. So with math, they just determined they were going to use a SBAC, or the Smarter Balanced Assessment, for 20% of a student's end of course grade. And with English, it became 15%. And then biology, it became 20%. Well, with our math and our English SBAC tests, our standardized tests, they actually only occur in 11th grade, whereas the biology occurs in the 10th grade. So students were put into a precarious situation of having to do extremely well on their Smarter Balance assessments in order to get good marks within their classes. So since we've established the standardized testing as a factor of a student's grade, we have not seen any significant positive changes to students' learning in the forms of higher grades. What we have seen is a decline in certain areas with regards to content knowledge of the student. So my research question: should a standardized test be administered to determine if a student has mastered content knowledge? And here I wanted to specifically focus on the mastery of the content knowledge and whether or not that is truly acknowledged and truly tested when you're giving someone a standardized test. So my hypothesis as it stands is standardized testing will show student knowledge of content pertaining to the test given and not the actual mastery of the subject material. So my dependent variable, content mastery, and my independent variable of standardized tests. So looking at my methodology and the survey construction, specifically, it was given as an online survey. It did consist of 18 questions, half and half. So 9 of those questions were demographic questions that actually looked at the individual taking it. I wanted to know their gender, ethnicity, age, grade level, the grade levels they have taught, how long they've been teaching, the content that they currently teach, whether or not they are highly qualified in the state in which they reside, as well as their geographical area. So the other 9 is the research-specific questions that were adapted from a study that was conducted back in 2015 by Hart, Casserly, Uzel, Palacios, Corcoran, and Spurgeon, based on student testing in America's great city schools. So specifically here, the questions that I utilized were looking specifically at whether or not the individuals taking the survey felt that a standardized test should be part of a student's end of course grade. I want to also look at whether or not they believe that a standardized test should be used to show content knowledge, and what specific grade levels they believed should have a standardized test given, and what school levels, whether it be elementary, middle, or high school. So then all of those particular questions within the research realm all consisted of a 5-point Likert scale based solely on highly disagree, neutral, agree, and then highly agree. So my population sample size was approximately 35 participants, all of which were teachers with a few retired teachers. So face validity based on the survey feedback from classmates. The face validity of the survey was confirmed. All of the questions that were asked corresponded to the actual research question posed. Reliability, so based on Kumar's 2018 definition of reliability for research tools, consistent and stable, hence predictable and accurate is said to be stable. A survey that was provided with regards to standardized testing measured the content knowledge is extremely reliable. So looking at the data, so looking at the what, when, where, how, who, and how many, specifically, as I said before, it was done on a 5-point Likert scale, with all of the data being collected on June 6th and 7th for the course. I did submit the survey via our class discussion board, as well as putting on my personal Facebook account, asking for my teacher friends across the country to also consider taking it as well. It was done utilizing a Google form. The survey was tailored specifically to current teachers, with a few other retired teachers taking it as well. And like I said before, 35 teachers had taken it. So looking more into the descriptive statistics with regards to the demographic questions, as you can see, 77% of the respondents were female, 20% being male, with 3% preferring not to say. Here's a breakdown of the ethnicity of those taking it. As you can see, almost 50% of the respondents identify themselves as Caucasian. Respondents' age varied, so I broke it down into some subcategories. If you look here, you can see that the minimum age of the respondents was 25, with a maximum age of 67, with an average age of about 38. So the grade levels taught is kind of a little all over, everything ranging from pre-K to adult education, with some higher ed mixed in there as well. Majority of the individuals taking the survey identify themselves as having taught elementary, as well as currently teaching elementary. So a vast majority, as you can see here, are currently teaching in elementary. So we have, looking at the number of years that the respondents have been teaching, everything from brand new teacher just starting to a 40-year veteran teacher, with approximately, like, the middle average was about 14. So like I said before, elementary education was predominant amongst the 35 participants that took the survey, with 80% of them being highly qualified, or what constitutes highly qualified in the state in which they reside in. Majority of them living on the West Coast, the few living throughout the United States. So kind of delving into the results as it stands. So what I was looking specifically at was determining content knowledge. With one of the particular questions, standardized tests should be used in determining a student's content knowledge. So what I took here was the amount of years that the teachers had been teaching, and looked at what those individuals said with regards to determining a student's content knowledge using a standardized test. As you can see, 17 of them sit within the disagree, while a few of them were in the agree. So the troubling part for me is the neutral, is those that are taking it not feeling as though they can give a definitive yes or no with regards to providing a standardized test will determine the student's content knowledge. So looking specifically at the breakdown for different schools at schooling levels, what I did here was actually take the elementary respondents and actually look at whether or not they felt a standardized test should be given at that grade level or that school level. As you can see, the yellow being disagree, a very large percentage of them disagree that elementary students should have to take a standardized test. And as it goes up from middle to high school, it shifts from disagree to more of a neutral and then to an agree as they get older. So some of the limitations, the standardized test data, I wasn't specific enough with what type of standardized test or what it actually looks like, whether it's ACT, SAT, SBAC, and of course, so that was one of the limitations, not actually having standardized testing data by grade level to look specifically at that. And then a few of the questions that were asked did not pertain specifically to the research question. They gave me a little bit more wiggle room to look at kind of aggregating a little bit more, which I did not have time within this class. So basically, with my conclusion, as a student, what I saw was as the students' grade levels increase, so did the belief by the respondents in utilizing a standardized test to gauge whether or not content knowledge was acquired from the students. So moving it forward and looking at what we could be possibly using it for later is why. What is the rationale between taking standardized testing and giving it to higher grade level students versus elementary level students? Is the rigor or the questions being asked on the standardized test harder, thus needing to be given to a student or someone who has more knowledge as they go? So that pretty much leads into needing to look into this issue a little bit more further and potentially dig in a little bit deeper. And here are my references. It's been a great opportunity, and I thank you so much.